The transport ship docked at Horizon's edge with a soft hiss. Unibeak stood near the back of the human delegation, her hands folded in front of her, her eyes cast downward. She was small, barely reaching the shoulders of the aliens around her. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the plain gray uniform of a cultural liaison officer. Nothing about her stood out. Nothing about her demanded attention. That was exactly how she wanted it. The space station was massive. It floated at the edge of known space, a meeting point for dozens of alien species. Traders, diplomats, soldiers, and criminals all walked its metal corridors. The air smelled strange, a mix of recycled oxygen and alien spices. Una breathed it in slowly and began to memorize everything she saw. A tall reptilian officer stood at the docking gate, his scales dark green and his eyes yellow. His name was Commander Varel, and he looked at the human delegation the way someone might look at insects. His lips curled back to show rows of sharp teeth. "And more humans," he said. His voice was deep and rough. "Earth sends us another group of children to babysit." The human ambassador smiled politely and began to speak, but Una was no longer listening. She was watching. She counted the guards at the gate. 4. She noted the weapons they carried. Plasma rifles, standard issue. She observed the security cameras, their angles, their blind spots. She filed everything away in her mind like papers in a cabinet. For the next 3 days, Una did her job. She translated documents. She attended meetings. She sat quietly in corners and took notes. The aliens ignored her completely. To them, she was furniture. She was background noise. She was nothing. This suited her perfectly. On the 4th day, she met Doyon Kang. He was a young Korean engineer stationed on the same deck as the diplomatic quarters. He had a round face, kind eyes, and a habit of talking too much. He found her sitting alone in the cafeteria, eating a bowl of rice with her old leather journal open beside her. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked, while UNA looked up. She studied his face for 2 seconds, then nodded once. Doyon sat down with his tray and smiled. "It's nice to see another Korean face out here. I've been on this station for 6 months, and sometimes I forget what home sounds like." Una said nothing. She continued eating. "I'm Doyon," he said. "I fix things. Engines, life support, broken doors. Anything that needs repair, they call me." He paused, waiting for her to respond. When she didn't, he laughed nervously. "You're not much of a talker, are you?" "No," Una said. "Al's okay. I talk enough for 2 people." He grinned and began eating his food. Over the following week, Doyon kept finding her. He would sit with her at meals, tell her stories about his work, and ask her questions she rarely answered. Una did not understand why he kept trying, but she did not push him away. There was something about his simple kindness that she found unfamiliar, almost pleasant. Meanwhile, strange things began to happen on Horizon's edge. A body was found in the lower decks. A trader named Mosk, a 6-armed creature known for selling weapons to pirates. He was discovered in a storage room, his throat cut with surgical precision. There were no witnesses. The security footage showed nothing but static during the time of death. 2 days later, another body appeared. This one was a mercenary, a hired killer who worked for the slave traders. He was found in an airlock, his neck broken. Again, no witnesses. No evidence. Nothing. The station's security chief, a tall insectoid named Crix, was baffled. He increased patrols. He questioned everyone. But the killings continued. A smuggler. A data thief. A blackmailer. All of them criminals. All of them dead. Rumors began to spread through the station. Some said it was a rival gang-cleaning house. Others whispered about a ghost, a spirit of vengeance that hunted the wicked. Commander Varel dismissed it all as nonsense. But even he began to look over his shoulder. No. One suspected the quiet human, a woman who spent her days translating documents. In her nights writing in her journal, Doyon mentioned the killings. One evening, as they sat together in the cafeteria, "Did you hear about the latest one?" Some weapons dealer, found dead in his own shop. People are scared, Yuna. They say something is hunting the station. Yuna took a sip of her tea. People always look for monsters, she said softly. They never think to look for humans. Doyen frowned, not understanding. He laughed awkwardly. You say strange things sometimes, do I? Later that night, Yuna returned to her quarters. She locked the door behind her and pulled a small case from beneath her bed. Inside were tools that no cultural liaison should possess. A blade made of a metal that did not exist in any official records. A wire thin enough to be invisible, but strong enough to cut through bone. A datapad filled with names, faces, and crimes. She crossed another name off the list. There were still many more. She moved to the small sink in the corner of her room. The water ran cold over her hands. Pink swirls disappeared down the drain. She watched them go with empty eyes. Her communicator buzzed. A message from Earth, encrypted and untraceable. She opened it and read the words from Heijan Park, her handler. Primary target confirmed. General Torek. Arriving at Horizon's Edge in 12 days. 3 colony massacres. 4,000 human dead. Authorization granted. Complete the mission. Yuna read the message twice, then deleted it. She looked at herself in the mirror. A small woman with a plain face and tired eyes stared back at her. The galaxy thought. Humans were soft, weak, emotional. They looked at Earth's people and saw children playing at space travel. They never imagined what those children had learned to do in the darkness between the stars. They never imagined that the quietest voice in the room could belong to the most dangerous. Predator Yuna turned off the light and lay down on her bed. Tomorrow she would smile and translate documents. She would nod politely and fade into the background. And every night she would continue her work. The hunt was far from over. Outside her window, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere out there, General Torek was coming. He did not know that death was already waiting for him, wearing the face of a woman no one ever noticed. And that was exactly how Yuna wanted it. The station grew tense as the days passed. More bodies appeared in the lower decks. A loan shark who had crushed families with impossible debts. An information broker who sold refugee locations to slavers. A corrupt security officer who looked the other way when children were taken. Each one was found dead, killed with the same cold precision as the others. Commander Vrel held an emergency meeting with the station council. His yellow eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep. We have a problem, he growled. Someone is hunting on my station, and I want them found. The council members shifted nervously. They were all powerful beings, representatives of species that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. But now they looked at each other with suspicion and fear.
Yes.
Perhaps it is one of us, said a delegate from the Merchant Guild. A rival faction eliminating competition. Perhaps, said another. It is something worse. Vrel slammed his fist on the table. I do not believe in ghosts. Find me the killer. But the killer was already sitting in the room. Yuna stood quietly in the corner, her datapad ready, her expression blank. She was there to take notes for the human ambassador. No one looked at her twice. No one ever did. That night, alone in her quarters, Yuna allowed herself to remember. She was 9 years old when the Dominion came to her colony. The planet was called New Busan, a small farming world on the edge of human space. It was peaceful, simple. Her father grew vegetables in the red soil. Her mother taught at the local school. Yuna had a little brother named Jiwon who followed her. Everywhere then, the ships appeared in the sky. The Dominion did not want the planet for resources. They wanted to send a message. Humanity was expanding too fast, too boldly. They needed to be reminded of their place. The soldiers came down like a storm. They burned the fields. They destroyed the buildings. They killed everyone they found. Yuna survived only because her mother hid her in a grain silo. Pressing a hand over her mouth to keep her quiet, she stayed in that silo for 3 days, listening to the screams fade into silence. When she finally crawled out, she found her family dead in the street. Her father, her mother. Little Giwan, still holding his toy robot. She did not cry. Something inside her had broken, and tears no longer came. Earth's rescue ships arrived too late to save anyone. But they found Yuna, sitting beside her family, her eyes empty. A military officer named Hajon Park looked at her and saw something, not a victim. A weapon waiting to be forged. He took her to a facility hidden deep beneath the mountains of Korea. The place had no official name, but those who knew of it called it Project Siren. There, Yuna and dozens of other orphans were trained. They learned to fight with their hands, with blades, with shadows. They learned every language spoken in the galaxy. They learned to read body language, to predict behavior, to become invisible. Most of all, they learned to hunt. The training was brutal. Many children did not survive, but Yuna endured. She took every lesson, every scar, every broken bone, and she turned them into strength. By the time she was 18, she was no longer H. Umin, in the way others understood it, she was a tracker, ghost, a nightmare dressed in plain clothes. For the next 10 years, she moved through the galaxy, doing work that never appeared in any record. She eliminated threats to humanity, one by one. Slavers, warlords, spies. Each target was studied, tracked, and removed. She never failed. She never hesitated. But sometimes, late at night, she wondered what she might have been if the ships had never come. A farmer's daughter, a teacher like her mother, someone who knew how to smile without pretending. The memories faded as Yuna opened her eyes. She was not on New Busan anymore. She was on Horizon's edge, and she had work to do. The next morning, she ran into Doyen in the corridor. He looked tired, but happy to see her. Yuna, I was looking for you. Want to get lunch together? She studied his face. There was no hidden agenda there, no calculation. He was simply kind. It confused her, as she said, surprising herself. Over lunch, Doyen talked about his family back on Earth, his mother, who worried too much, his sister, who was studying medicine, his dream of one day returning home and opening a small repair shop. What about you? He asked, do you have family waiting for you? Yuna was quiet for a long moment. No, she said finally. They are gone. Doyen's smile faded. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked. It was a long time ago. He looked at her with those kind eyes, and for a moment she felt something crack inside her chest. It was uncomfortable. She did not like it. Later that day, she received another report from Hajon. General Torik's fleet had entered the sector. He would arrive in 8 days. The message included details about his security, his habits, and his weaknesses. Torik was not like her previous targets. He was a legend, a military genius who had crushed rebellions across a dozen star systems. He traveled with a personal guard of 50 elite soldiers, each one a killer in their own right. He had never lost a battle. He had never shown mercy, but Yuna had studied legends before. She knew that every legend had cracks if you looked closely enough, and she always looked closely. That night, she killed again. A Dominion spy who had been mapping human communication networks. She left his body in a maintenance shaft where it would not be found for days. As she walked back to her quarters through the empty corridors, she passed a window that looked out into space. She stopped and stared at the stars. Somewhere out there, Torik was coming. He thought he was untouchable. He thought humans were weak and harmless. He had burned colonies and murdered thousands without consequence. He had never met a tracker. Yuna touched the glass with her fingertips. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and cold. I am coming for you, she whispered to the stars. And you will never see me until it is too late. She turned and walked away, her footsteps silent on the metal floor. The station slept around her, unaware of the predator in their midst. The hunt was entering its final phase. The Dominion fleet arrived like a dark cloud. 12 warships, black and angular, surrounded the station. Smaller ships moved between them like insects around a hive. At the center of the formation floated the flagship, a massive vessel called the Iron Judgment. That was where General Torik waited. The station's population watched the fleet with fear. Even Commander Vrel seemed smaller somehow, his usual arrogance replaced with nervous respect. The Dominion did not visit places. They conquered them. Torek came aboard with 50 soldiers at his back. He was enormous, even for his species. His scales were the color of dried blood, and his eyes were like black stones. Scars covered his face and arms, marks from 100 battles. He walked through the station as if he already owned it. "So this is Horizon's Edge," he said, his voice like grinding rocks. "A meeting place for traitors and thieves. How charming." Commander Vrel hurried to greet him. "General Torek, it is an honor. We have prepared quarters for you and your soldiers." "The finest on the station?" Torek barely looked at him. "I have heard rumors about this station. Something hunting in the shadows, killing criminals like a ghost." He smiled, showing teeth like broken glass. "Do you believe in ghosts, Commander?" Vrel's scales darkened with embarrassment. "Superstition, General? Nothing more." "Good. I would hate to think the mighty Dominion is afraid of shadows." His soldiers laughed. The sound echoed through the corridor like the bark of predators. Una watched from a distance. Standing with the other human delegates, she memorized everything. The number of soldiers, their weapons, their formation, the way they moved and how they watched the crowd. She noted which ones looked tired, which ones seemed distracted, which ones were truly dangerous. Most were trained killers, but they were soldiers. They followed orders. They worked in groups. They relied on their numbers and their weapons. Una worked alone. And she had something they did not: patience. Over the next 3 days, she studied Torek's routine. He woke at the same time each morning. He ate the same foods. He held meetings in the same conference room. His guards rotated in predictable patterns. They were disciplined, but discipline was also a weakness. Patterns could be learned. Patterns could be exploited. She began with the outer guards, the ones who patrolled the corridors late at night, far from their companions. One by one, they disappeared. Not dead, not yet, just missing. She wanted Torek to feel the pressure building. She wanted him to know that something was coming. Doyen found her on the 5th day after Torek's arrival. She was in a maintenance corridor near the station's power grid. He had been looking for a broken conduit and stumbled upon her instead. "Una." He frowned, confused. "What are you doing down here?" She turned to face him. In her hand was a blade, thin and dark. Behind her, a hidden panel was open, revealing a cache of weapons she had stored there weeks ago. Doyen's eyes went wide. He stared at the blade, then at the weapons, then at her face. She saw the moment when understanding began to dawn. "You," he whispered. "The ghost. The killer everyone is talking about. It's you." Una did not move. Her fingers tightened on the blade. Every instinct she had told her to silence him. He was a witness. He was a threat. One quick movement, and he would tell no one. But she hesitated. She had killed many people over the years. Criminals, enemies, threats to humanity. She had never hesitated before, but Doyen was different. He was kind. He was innocent. He reminded her of something she had lost long ago. "Una," he said, his voice shaking, "please, tell me what is happening." She lowered the blade slowly. "You should not have come here, but I did, and now I need to understand." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she made a decision that went against everything she had been trained to do. She told him the truth. "I am what humanity built to survive," she said quietly. "When the Dominion burns our colonies and kills our people, Earth cannot fight back openly. We are too weak, too young. So we fight in other ways. You're an assassin. I am a tracker. I hunt those who hurt humanity. I find them, and I make sure they never hurt anyone again." Doyen leaned against the wall, his face pale. "The people you killed. They were criminals, slavers, murderers. Yes. And now? Who is your target now?" Una looked toward the upper decks, where Torek's soldiers patrolled. "General Turek. He destroyed 3 human colonies. He killed 4,000 of our people, including women and children. He laughed while they burned. Doyon was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was small. I thought I knew you. You eat lunch with me? You listen to my stupid stories. And all this time, I was doing my job. Yuna paused. But the lunches were not part of the job. Those were something else. He looked at her, searching her face for something he could recognize. She did not know if he found it. You could have killed me, he said. When I walked in, you could have silenced me forever, yes? Why didn't you? Yuna did not have an answer. Or perhaps she did, but she could not say it aloud. That night, she killed Torik's chief advisor. She found him alone in his quarters, reviewing reports. He never saw her coming. When she was finished, she carved a message into the wall in Korean. 3 words that had become her signature. We remember. The next morning, the station erupted in chaos. Torik's roar of rage could be heard across 3 decks. He gathered his soldiers and announced that the station was on lockdown. No one would leave until the assassin was found. I know you are here, he declared to the watching crowd. I know you are human. Show yourself, and I will give you a quick death. Hide, and I will burn this station to ash with everyone on it. Yuna stood in the crowd, her head bowed, her face blank. She was just another frightened human in a sea of frightened faces. But inside, she smiled. The hunt was just beginning. The station became a prison. Torik's soldiers patrolled every corridor, checked every room, and questioned every passenger. Thermal scanners swept the decks. AI programs analyzed movement patterns. The general was determined to find his ghost. He also started taking hostages 20. Human civilians were gathered in the main plaza and surrounded by armed guards. Turik stood before them, his black eyes scanning the crowd that had gathered to watch. I will make this simple, he announced. The assassin has 1 hour to surrender. For every hour that passes without surrender, I will execute 1 human, starting with the youngest. Yuna watched from the edge of the crowd. A mother clutched her small child, tears running down her face. An old man stood with his head held high, refusing to show fear. They were innocent. They had nothing to do with her mission. This was the moment when everything changed. In her ear, a small communicator buzzed. Hedgen's voice came through, distant and crackling. Siren, we are monitoring the situation. Command says you must complete the mission. Torik cannot leave this station alive, I understand. The hostages are not your concern. You knew there would be casualties. Yuna was silent. She watched the little child crying in her mother's arms. Siren, confirm you understand. I understand, she said again. Then she removed the communicator from her ear and crushed it under her heel. She found Doyon hiding in his workshop, surrounded by half-repaired machines. His face was pale but determined. The hostages, he said. You have to do something. I know. If you surrender, he will just kill you and then kill them anyway. But if you stay hidden, then innocents die because of me. Yuna looked at him. I need your help. What do you need? Access to the station's power grid, the security systems, and the docking clamps that connect Torik's ship to the station. Doyon stared at her. You're going to attack his ship directly? It is the only way. If I eliminate him before the hour ends, the hostages will be saved. That's suicide. He has 50 soldiers in there. Yuna met his eyes. Then I will kill 50 soldiers. There was no boasting in her voice. No emotion. She stated it like a simple fact, like saying the sky was black or the stars were bright. Doyen swallowed hard. Then he nodded. Tell me what to do. Over the next 40 minutes, they worked together. Doyen accessed the station's systems and began disabling security cameras along the path to Torik's ship. He created false alarms on the opposite side of the station, drawing soldiers away from their posts. He unlocked maintenance hatches and ventilation shafts that would give Yuna access to the ship. Meanwhile, Yuna prepared. She strapped blades to her forearms, her thighs, her back. She loaded a compact pistol with armor-piercing rounds. She covered her face with a dark mask and pulled her hair tight. Yuna Doyan said as she prepared to leave. Be careful. She paused at the door. Thank you, Doyan, for everything. Just come back alive, okay? I still owe you lunch. She almost smiled. Almost. The assault began at 52 minutes. Yuna moved through the station like smoke. She used the ventilation shafts Doyan had opened, crawling through metal tunnels barely wide enough for her body. She emerged in a storage room adjacent to the docking port where Torik's ship waited. 2 guards stood at the entrance. They were elite soldiers, trained for decades. They never saw her coming. She dropped from the ceiling like a shadow. Her blade found the first guard's throat before he could scream. She spun, catching the second guard's rifle arm and breaking it at the elbow. Her other hand drove a blade into his heart. Both bodies hit the floor within 3 seconds. She stepped over them and entered the ship. The Iron Judgment was a maze of black metal and red lights. It smelled of oil and fear. Yuna moved through its corridors, silent and fast. Every guard she encountered fell before they could raise an alarm. A blade to the neck, a wire around the throat, a precise strike to the base of the skull. She was not fighting. She was harvesting Torik soldiers had trained for thousands of hours. They knew how to shoot, how to hold positions, how to work as a unit, but they did not know how to fight something they could not see. They did not know how to defend against an enemy that moved like water and struck like lightning. One by one they fell. In corridors, in stairwells, in the dark corners where they thought they were safe, Yuna counted. The bodies as she moved, 12, 20, 30-1, an alarm finally sounded. Red lights flashed. Soldiers began to organize, forming defensive positions, calling for backup. But it was too late. Yuna was already inside the inner ring. Approaching the command center, 43 dead. A squad of 10 soldiers blocked her path. They opened fire, plasma bolts lighting up the corridor like a thunderstorm. Yuna dove and rolled, using the walls and doorways as cover. She threw a blade, catching one soldier in the eye. She shot another through the gap in his armor. She moved among them like a dancer, turning their numbers against them. When the smoke cleared, 10 more bodies lay on the floor, 53 dead. Yuna stood before the door to Torik's command chamber. Her mask was torn. Blood ran down her arm from a graze wound. Her breath came hard and fast, but she was still standing. And the door was just ahead. She kicked it open. Torik waited inside, alone. His guards were dead or scattered. His ship was filled with corpses. He stood in the center of the room, a massive war axe in his hands, his black eyes burning with something that might have been fear. So, he said, his voice a low growl, you are the ghost. A human. A small, weak human. Yuna stepped into the room. She held a single blade in her right hand. Her eyes were cold and empty. I have killed thousands of your kind, Torik said. I have burned your worlds and scattered your ashes to the stars. You think one little creature can challenge me? Yuna raised her blade. Yes, she said. And the final battle began. Torik was everything his legend promised. He was fast for his size, brutal in his strength, and skilled with the massive axe that had killed hundreds before. He swung the weapon in wide arcs that could have cut a human in half. But Yuna was not a normal human. She ducked under his first strike, feeling the wind of the blade pass over her head. She rolled to the side as his second swing smashed into the floor, sending sparks flying. She was smaller, weaker, and outmatched in every physical way. But she was also patient, and she had been trained to hunt things larger than herself. Torik laughed as she dodged another blow. Is this the best humanity can offer? A little mouse that runs and hides? Yuna did not answer. She was watching, learning. She saw how he favored his right side. She noticed the slight hesitation in his left shoulder, an old wound that had never fully healed. She counted the seconds between his attacks, measuring his rhythm. He swung again. This time, she did not retreat. She stepped inside his reach, too close for the axe to hit. Her blade flashed, opening a cut across his forearm. He roared and tried to grab her, but she was already gone, spinning away like a leaf in the wind. First blood, his insect. Torik snarled. He attacked with renewed fury, his axe a blur of death. The room shook with the force of his blows. Consoles exploded. Walls cracked. He was destroying his own command center in his rage. Yuna used it all. She led him toward the damaged areas, forcing him to navigate debris and broken machinery. She made him work, made him chase, made him waste his strength on air and shadows, and all the while she cut him. A slice across the leg, a stab to the side, a deep wound in his shoulder. None of them fatal, but each one slowing him down, draining him drop by drop. "What are you?" he demanded, blood dripping from a dozen wounds. His breathing was heavy now, his movements slower. No human fights like this. Yuna circled him, her blade ready. "I am the answer to every colony you burned, every child you murdered, every family you destroyed. I am what you created." Torek charged one final time, putting all his remaining strength into a killing blow. The axe came down like a falling star. Yuna was not there. She had stepped to the side at the last possible moment, her body twisting like water. As he overextended, she struck. Her blade drove deep into the gap in his armor, finding the space between his ribs. She twisted the weapon, then pulled it free. Torek staggered. He dropped his axe. His massive hands pressed against the wound in his chest, but blood poured through his fingers like a dark river. He fell to his knees. For the first time in his life, General Turek, the terror of the frontier. The butcher of New Busan looked up at someone smaller than himself. "Possible," he whispered. Yuna stood before him, covered in blood that was both his and hers. She was exhausted. Her body ached from a dozen injuries, but her eyes were clear and cold. "You asked what I am," she said. "I will tell you. I am a tracker. I am humanity's memory, and I am the last thing you will ever see." She raised her blade. "We remember." The blade fell. 10 minutes later, Yuna activated the ship's broadcast system. Her image appeared on every screen across the station and was transmitted to every ship in the system. She stood in Torek's command chamber, his body visible behind her. "My name does not matter," she said, her voice calm. "What matters is this." She played footage that she had recovered from Torek's own archives. Videos of the colonial massacres, images of burning cities and fleeing civilians, recordings of Torek himself giving orders to kill everyone, sparing no one. "This is what the Dominion did to humanity," Yuna continued. 3 colonies, 4,000 lives, women, children, families, gone. She paused, letting the images speak for themselves. "The galaxy called us weak. They called us soft. They thought we would break. They were wrong." She stepped forward, filling the screen. "Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. And from this moment forward, let every tyrant and every warlord understand one simple truth." Her eyes burned with quiet fire. "We are no longer hiding." The broadcast ended. Across the station, chaos erupted. Torek's remaining soldiers surrendered or fled. The hostages were released, saved with 8 minutes to spare. Commander Vrel locked himself in his quarters and began sending urgent messages to his superiors. But the news could not be contained. Within hours, the footage spread across the galaxy. Alien species that had dismissed humanity as children watched in shock. A single human woman had killed a Dominion general and 50 of his elite soldiers. She had walked into the heart of his power and walked out again. The whispers began immediately. If one human could do this, what could 100 do? 1,000? What had these soft, emotional creatures become in the darkness of space? For the first time in centuries, the galaxy looked at humanity with new eyes. Not pity, not amusement, fear. Why Yuna did not stay to see the aftermath? She slipped away in the confusion, her wounds bandaged, her presence forgotten. She found Doyan, waiting for her near the emergency escape pods, his face pale but relieved. "You're alive," he said. Double quotes. "Yes." Out. I watched the broadcast. The whole station watched it, shook his head in amazement. "You changed everything, Yuna. Nothing will be the same after this." She leaned against the wall, feeling the exhaustion finally catching up to her. It was just one battle. There are more fights ahead. Will you stay? She thought about it. She thought about the list of names still in her datapad. The criminals and monsters still walking free. The work that would never truly be finished. Yes, she said finally. For now? Doyan smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Good, because I still owe you lunch. For the first time and longer than she could remember, Yuna smiled back. A small smile, barely there, but real. Her communicator buzzed. A new message from Earth, from a handler she did not know. Hajan had been removed from her case, but the mission continued. Welcome back, Siren. The galaxy is watching now. The hunt continues. Yuna deleted the message and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, enemies of humanity still lurked. Tyrants and killers who thought they were safe. They had heard the stories now. They knew the ghost was real. Good. Let them be afraid. Let them look over their shoulders and wonder if death was coming for them, because it was. She was. The galaxy had learned an important lesson today. Humans were not weak. They were not soft. They were survivors who had clawed their way up from a single blue planet to walk among the stars, and the quiet ones. The ones who faded into backgrounds and spoke softly and never drew attention. Those were the ones you should fear most of all. Yuna touched the window, her reflection staring back at her. She was tired. She was wounded. But she was still standing, and the hunt was far from over.